Solomon wrote in Proverbs 14:12, he says, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death." He must have thought this pretty important because in Proverbs 16, verse 25, he wrote the same thing again. So apparently he wanted to put emphasis on this particular phrase that there is a way that seems right to a man. What is the source that you use to determine what is right? What source do you use to determine what's right in your spiritual life? You know, I know it's test time, or it's not test time anymore. I think most everybody's out, but when I took a test, I never prepared well enough to know what the right answers were when it came to test time. But if I could get a test that had multiple choice, I could always eliminate the wrong answers. And, if they stood out as really being wrong, I knew what the right answer would be. Those tests were easier. Tonight, let's look at the wrong answers to this question of what determines what is right. Sometimes we decide on our own what's right, like Jonah did. Jonah was told to go to Nineveh to preach to the city of Nineveh because they were wicked. God gave him directions, but Jonah decided on his own that, no, those people are so wicked that I don't want to go and see God's mercy put on them and let them live. They need to die in their sin. But it says in Jonah 1:1, "Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." See, God gave him direction, and Jonah didn't. He chose to go his own direction. In Jeremiah 10:23, it says, "O Lord, I know the way of man is not in himself. It is not in man who walks to direct his own steps." Sometimes we take it on our own to figure out what direction it is on our own without looking at God's word. And then sometimes we let the majority decide what's right. For example, in Genesis chapter 11, the people of Shinar, the descendants of Noah, they were in the land of Shinar, and they decided that, we're just going to make a name for ourselves. We're going to build this tower so everybody will know who we are. This city is going to be our city. They're going to know it by this big tower that we're going to build up into the heavens. And, we're going to be known for this. But they were unified in everything that they did. Everybody was, together on this. But, in Genesis 9, starting with verse 1, it says, "So God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." So they were supposed to spread out on the earth. They weren't supposed to stop there in Shinar and make a tower and live there the rest of their lives. They were supposed to go by what God told them to do and fill the earth. Sometimes we go by what the majority says. That's sometimes what we think is right, is, well, the majority, everybody else, is good with that, so that's what we're going to do. A lot of religions are started, different religions are started that way because the majority decided this is what we think is right. Then sometimes we let Satan decide what's right. We read in Genesis 3:23, "And the woman said to the serpent, We may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God said, You shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Then the serpent said to the woman, You will not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." I saw not long ago a statement somewhere that said Satan did not tempt Adam and Eve to lie, cheat, or murder. He just tempted them to question God. And sometimes that's what we do when we make the wrong decisions. We know where the source of our decisions should come from, and we let the devil and others influence us and make the wrong decision. So we can see that in all these cases that God's word was always right. That's what determines what's right in our lives, following God's word. The psalmist said, your word in Psalms 119, verse 11, it says, your word have I hidden in my heart that I might not sin against you. In that same, two more verses in that same chapter, verse 105, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. And then in verse 160, the entirety of your word is truth. Tonight, think about the decisions that you've made in your life. If you haven't made those decisions based on what God's word says, well, maybe tonight you need to change that source of where you get your truth. Tonight you have that opportunity as we sing this invitation song, and you have the opportunity to come forward now as we stand and sing.